So what if I told you that your entire digital life, your photos, your emails, your bank accounts, is basically a house? Well, today, we're going to hand you the blueprint to secure it.
All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll sketch out the blueprint for this digital house of yours. Then, we'll get into the 3 pillars that actually make it secure. After that, it's time to install the locks and alarms. We'll even try to think like a burglar to find all the weak spots. And then finally, we'll hand you the keys to your very own secure digital kingdom. Sound good?
Okay, first up, what is cybersecurity really? I mean, before we can even start protecting our digital house, we got to understand the blueprint of what we're building in the first place.
So, here's the big question. How do you protect something you can't even see? It feels a little abstract, right? Well, the key is to ground all these ideas in an analogy that we can all get our heads around instantly.
So, for this whole explainer, let's just agree to think of your entire digital life, all your data, every account, all your devices, as one big house. And our job? It's to make that house secure. This digital house idea, that's going to be our guide to making every single one of these concepts totally clear.
Okay, so we've got our house, but what actually makes it secure? Well, it really all comes down to these 3 core principles, something known as the CIA security triad. And no, we're not talking about the intelligence agency here. This is literally the foundation of a safe digital home. First on the list is confidentiality. In our house analogy, this is super simple. It's all about privacy. You want curtains on the windows and good locks on the doors, right? It just means your private files, your personal messages, they stay private, away from any prying eyes.
Then we've got integrity, and this one is all about trust. It's that guarantee that nobody has snuck into your house and, swapped the sugar for salt. You have to know that the files you open are exactly as you left them, with 0 secret alterations or tampering.
And finally, there's availability. And honestly, this is a huge point. I mean, what good are the world's best locks if you lose the key yourself? Security is completely useless if it ends up locking you out. So availability means you can always get into your own digital house and get to your stuff whenever you need it. Simple as that.
Okay, so now we know what we're protecting. That's the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So let's talk about how we actually protect it. This next part is all about guarding those digital gates.
So, guarding the gates. This means installing the actual security systems for our digital house. Think of this as your digital equivalent of putting up strong fences, installing motion sensor lights, and getting a state-of-the-art alarm system. In the tech world, that stuff translates to things like firewalls and anti-malware software. But, all those alarms are pretty useless if you just hand the keys over to a complete stranger. And that's exactly where identity comes in. It's like having a bouncer at your front door checking IDs. It's the part of the system that asks, hey, are you really who you say you are? And that's the job of things like your passwords and multi-factor authentication, proving you're the rightful owner.
All right, to really truly secure our house, we have to flip our whole perspective. We have to start thinking like the people who are trying to break in. So welcome to the anatomy of a threat.
So what exactly is a threat? Well, put simply, it's the burglar. It's any person or any malicious program that's actively trying to break into your digital house to steal your stuff, damage things, or just disrupt your life.
And these burglars, they have a lot of ways to get in. Some might try to pick the lock. That's kind of like malware. Others might dress up as a delivery person to trick you into opening the door. That's a classic phishing attack. And then there are some who will literally barricade your door from the outside and demand money just to let you back in. And that, my friends, is ransomware.
So, how does the burglar actually get inside? They're always looking for a vulnerability. And a vulnerability is just an unlocked window, or maybe a flimsy back door, or even that spare key you thought you hid so well under the flower pot. It's that pre-existing weakness that they can exploit to get access.
But see, that unlocked window becomes so much more dangerous because of the hazard. A hazard is all about the surrounding context. It's like the fact that your house is located in a high-crime neighborhood. Now, the neighborhood itself isn't the burglar, right? But being there dramatically increases the chance that a burglar is going to come along and start checking your windows.
And all of that brings us to risk. Risk is where it all comes together. It's the combination of the threat, that's the burglar, the vulnerability, the open window, and the hazard, the bad neighborhood. Risk is what answers the ultimate question. So what are the actual chances my house gets robbed, and how bad is the damage going to be if it does?
So, after all of that, what's the big takeaway here?
How can you actually use this blueprint to secure your own digital world?
Here it is. This is your complete cybersecurity blueprint. On one side, you've got your defense, confidentiality to protect your secrets, integrity for trustworthiness, availability so you always have access, and identity to guard the front door. And on the other side, you've got the attack, the threat itself, their opening through a vulnerability, and the overall risk you're facing. If you can master these 7 concepts, you've mastered the language of digital safety.
And that really brings us to our final thought. Now that you have the blueprint, now that you have the language to describe and really understand digital security, how secure is your digital house? Because understanding these concepts, that's the first and honestly the most powerful step you can take to look at your own digital world and start taking real, meaningful steps to protect it.
We're going to dive deep into the world of cybersecurity. And look, if you think you're safe just because you've got the basics covered, we really need to talk. Because the old ways of thinking about digital protection, they just don't cut it anymore in the world we live in today. So let me just ask you this straight up. Is that firewall and antivirus software you set up a few years back still enough to protect you? Well, the short answer is not even close. Let's get into why the entire ground has shifted right under our feet. The reality is the whole game has changed. I mean, think about it. So much of our lives, our banking, our businesses, even our homes are built on cloud services and this massive web of connected devices. And all of that has created this huge, complex playground for cybercriminals who are, by the way, getting smarter and more organized every single day. The old playbook? Yeah, it's basically useless now. Okay, so when we throw around the term cybersecurity, what are we really trying to protect? What's actually at stake here? It all boils down to one simple, powerful word: data. But that one word covers a whole lot of ground, so let's break it down. And the sheer amount of stuff that's at risk is just staggering. This isn't just about your Netflix password anymore, right? We're talking about incredibly sensitive company secrets, our personal health records, priceless intellectual property, and critical financial and government information. Every single one of those is a top-tier target. Let's just zoom in on one of these for a second. PII. That stands for Personally Identifiable Information. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Any little piece of data that can be used to point a finger directly at you as an individual. When that stuff gets stolen, it's not just a data breach, it's personal. And this really gets to the heart of the issue. An organization without a solid, up-to-date cybersecurity plan isn't just vulnerable, it's practically putting up a giant glowing neon sign that says "Easy Target." It's the digital version of leaving your front door wide open with a welcome mat out for criminals. But look, this isn't just some abstract, theoretical problem. The threat is incredibly real, it's happening right now, and the numbers behind it are, well, they're pretty startling. Let's take a look at how often these attacks are really happening. Get this. According to a UK government study, a mind-blowing 39%, that's nearly 4 out of every 10 businesses, reported some kind of cyber attack or breach in the last year alone. Just let that sink in for a minute. Almost half the businesses you probably deal with have been a target recently. And don't think for a second this is just about big for-profit companies. Nope. A quarter of all charities also reported attacks. It just goes to show you, if you hold valuable data of any kind, you are on their radar. Period. But here's the part that is truly relentless. For those organizations that got hit, a full quarter of them were experiencing breaches at least once a week. This isn't a one-and-done event. For many, it's a constant, never-ending siege. So, how are these attackers getting in? What's their secret weapon? Well, the data is crystal clear. A whopping 81% of these breaches involve phishing. And why is that? It's because it's so much easier to trick a person than it is to break through a complex piece of code. They prey on our trust, they create a false sense of urgency, and just like that, they're in. It proves that the biggest vulnerability often isn't the technology, it's the people using it. This quote just nails it. It perfectly captures what's going on. It really is this endless cat and mouse game. As soon as a new defense goes up, the criminals are already figuring out a way around it. It means security isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's a continuous, evolving process. So, what happens when those defenses fail? Let's talk about the real cost of a breach. Because believe me, it goes way beyond just a number on a spreadsheet. The average direct financial cost of a single breach is estimated at over £8,000. Now, for a small business, a hit like that can be absolutely devastating. But remember, That's just the average, direct cost. The true impact is so much wider and, honestly, far more damaging. These are the hidden costs that number doesn't even begin to capture. You've got the time and resources you have to pour into just responding to the attack. You've got the business you lose while your systems are down. And then there's the big one, the irreversible damage to your reputation. Because once customer trust is gone, it is incredibly hard to ever get it back. So with all this going on, how are organizations actually responding? Well, the data reveals a fascinating and frankly a somewhat worrying trend. The most common action at 43% is taking out cyber insurance. That's a plan for what to do after you've already been hit. In contrast, only 20% are proactively testing their staff with things like mock phishing exercises, the stuff that helps prevent the attack from ever happening in the first place. And that really leads us to this crucial final question. If the most common response is to buy insurance, are we just preparing to fail? Are we putting all our energy into planning for the inevitable breach instead of building systems and training people to actually win the fight? It's something to really think about. Today, we're talking about the massive ripple effect of a single cyber attack and how one tiny mistake can set off a chain reaction with some truly devastating consequences. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? But that's exactly what we're going to explore today. How one single failure in cybersecurity can have these huge, far-reaching consequences. And it all kicks off with a simple, deceptive email. So let's dive right into our case study, the Rendezvous Inn. It's a small hotel that, one day, found itself facing a catastrophic and very, very expensive problem. What happened was a classic phishing scam. It's a simple trick, really, but it unfolded in 4 absolutely disastrous steps. First, an email pops up that looks like it's from HMRC, the tax office. The CEO, thinking it's legitimate, clicks the link and types in their login details. And in that instant, bam, the criminals have captured those credentials, giving them full access to pretty much everything. With those credentials, the criminals basically had the keys to the kingdom. They didn't waste a second, going straight for the hotel's finances. In what was a shockingly short amount of time, over £1 million were just gone, siphoned right out of the hotel's account. A devastating blow for any business, for sure. But the money, believe it or not, was just the beginning. That £1 million theft was a huge blow, no doubt. But what the hackers grabbed next? Well, that was going to create even deeper, longer-lasting problems for the hotel. Yeah. After draining the bank account, they broke into the hotel's computer systems, and they were targeting its most valuable asset, its data. And just look at the sheer variety of data these guys are after. It's not just one thing. They grab personal info like birth dates for identity theft, sensitive guest details for things like blackmail, and even a company's intellectual property. We're talking unique business plans, formulas, which they can then sell to competitors. Every single piece has its own price tag. And this gives you a pretty good idea of where all that stolen data ends up. It's sold on the dark web, that hidden corner of the internet. And this creates a long-term nightmare, not just for the business, but for every single person whose information was compromised. So that initial loss of money and data, that's just the start. It triggers a chain reaction, what we can think of as 3 distinct waves of damage. These are the 3 big ones that can absolutely cripple an organization. It's not a single event, it's a cascade of problems. So let's break down each one. First up, the economic damage. And let me tell you, this goes way, way beyond that initial £1 million that was stolen. You see, for criminals, it's all about the money, and they inflict financial pain at every single stage. You've got the direct theft, obviously, but then comes the cost of disruption when you physically can't do business. Then there's the money you have to spend on repairs. And on top of that, there's all the future business you lose because your reputation is shot. It's just a constant financial drain. And that leads us perfectly into the second wave, because sometimes what you lose in trust is worth so much more than what you lose in cash. And that is such a crucial point. Trust is the absolute foundation of your relationship with your customers. A cyber attack can shatter that trust in an instant. And let me tell you, rebuilding it is an incredibly difficult job. And this loss of trust isn't just a feeling, right? It has very real, tangible consequences. It's like a domino effect. You lose customers, which means you lose sales, which of course means your profits tank. It can even damage your relationships with suppliers and totally scare off investors. It's a cascade that can cripple a business for years. And finally, we get to the third wave. Failing to protect data doesn't just lose you customers, it can put your entire organization on the wrong side of the law. You know, modern data privacy laws are really strict. They require organizations to secure personal data, and if you fail, the penalties can be severe. We're talking massive fines, regulatory sanctions, maybe even having your banking facilities pulled. And on top of all that, you could be facing lawsuits from anyone who suffered a loss because their data was compromised through you. Okay, so let's tie all of this back. Let's connect all these devastating consequences to that single moment of vulnerability where this whole mess started. That whole three-wave crisis we just walked through, the financial ruin, the shattered reputation, the legal nightmare, every bit of it began with a single careless click on a fake email. It is such a stark reminder that these huge disasters can have very small, very simple beginnings. The Rendezvous Inn story really proves that cybersecurity isn't just some IT problem. Nope. It's a core business risk for everyone, from the CEO down. That single, careless click led to a million-pound disaster. And it forces all of us to ask that tough question. Is our data truly secure? And what one tiny vulnerability could bring everything crashing down?